Let's begin with our top story, a sad one. We're looking at Air India crash victims' families who are still grieving with what happened, but the horror hasn't ended for them clearly. Air India crash families already struggling with unimaginable grief, now dealing with another heartbreaking blow. Shocking news report that's now emerged from the UK suggesting that at least two families have received wrong bodies. In one case, a funeral had to be cancelled when relatives of the victim there found that the body that they had received, the coffin that they had received, did not have the body of their loved ones. Of course, these are images that we are showing, general images and shots of families at large. But the two particular families that I'm speaking of are those from the United Kingdom. They are loved ones who were traveling, who died in this crash. Two of the families claim that they've received wrong bodies, and they found out after they actually carried out DNA tests to see if it matches with their loved ones. Now, that's shocking enough. In another case, body parts of more than one victim was mistakenly placed in the same casket. So, in one coffin, there were two bodies and they don't recognize the other. The mix-up has only come to light when London coroner conducted a DNA check on the remains that they received in London and found that the identities did not match with the families as per the DNA records they had. According to sources in India, the remains were handled by the government civil hospital in Ahmedabad. It was a government responsibility, we hear, where DNA samples and sealing of coffins were done by them. Air India, we understand, has not been involved in this identification process. Air India is only involved in transporting the coffins to UK via Kenyan International, a global emergency services firm. But otherwise, all the DNA tests and identification, etc., was all dealt with the Ahmedabad government hospital. But families here who are grieving, they say the damage is already done. They say that they've been robbed of even the dignity of a proper farewell to their loved ones. Remember, on June 12th, Air India Flight 171, a fully fueled Boeing 787 Dreamliner, crashed just minutes after takeoff from Ahmedabad. It was en route to London's Gatwick. It exploded on impact inside a medical college campus, and 260 people had died, including those on board and on ground. One survived. Since then, families have been camping outside hospitals. Forensic teams have worked round the clock, collecting debris, identifying remains, matching DNA, all in the hope of giving families some closure. And this news now has really upset them furthermore. Of course, Indian government promising to look into it. This is a fresh anguish that unfolds. Indian government says it has been working very closely with United Kingdom officials since this issue was flagged. MEA spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal has said identification was done as per protocols and technical requirements. It was all done professionally, and that the mortal remains were handled with utmost professionalism and dignity. This is what the Indian government has said. MEA spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal has issued a statement on this. Now, while the investigation continues, this controversy really adding pressure on the government at this point, and also pressure on Air India, that's already under scrutiny over multiple safety scares in the recent past. The timing of this also is very significant. Remember, this is right in time when Prime Minister Modi is visiting the United Kingdom. The issue could very well feature in official talks there. Now, who takes responsibility for this botch-up, this painful mix-up? Was it a lapse at the hospital level, failure in protocol? This is truly a shameful chapter in Indian aviation, and a lot of answers need to come out. At the moment, the families are grieving, want the real bodies of their loved ones to reach them as soon as possible. Let me now bring in my guest joining us, Captain Sanjay Karve, aviation expert and former accountable manager, Aviation Government of Maharashtra. We also have Captain Akshay Chopra, aviation expert, former IAF pilot, and Dr. Sampath Kumar, HOD, Department of Forensic Medicine, Savita Medical College. Let me first begin with Dr. Sampath Kumar, who's in fact privy or understands very well DNA matching, testing, and the process protocols for it. Dr. Sampath, is this possible? I'm shocked, and of course the world is shocked. India is itself shocked when news reports emerged that two UK families who were waiting for the mortal remains of their loved ones to reach them found another person's body in it. DNAs did not match. Could this really be such a casual attitude while sending bodies abroad? How easily could this be mismanaged?
Yes, it is a rare possibility, In India also it occurs very rarely, even when in with features well preserved. Sometimes they do not look carefully into the face, and then they mix up the body and then take home, and then it is exchanged. But just where the body has been charred, they cannot identify the body looking at the features or any other thing such as dress or anything. So they just rely on the DNA matching, and they believe and they take it. And usually they do not open the coffins like in an war time and all. So this is an tragedy which has occurred, and the relatives were so keen to cross verify at home. So they have seen that it doesn't match, but in that coffin any one of the part should have been matched. That is why they have put a body, and then they put that matching DNA in that. And secondly, I wanted to tell, this is what I heard was this was done by civil hospital
Yeah, civil
in
hospital
Gujarat.
Ahmedabad has done it,
Ahmedabad,
but
Ahmedabad.
what? Okay, fine. We can't understand or can't recognize the bodies just based on their features because they're fully charred. But the body is in one piece. It's not like it's dismembered, is it?
Sometimes if they had one arm, if it is dismembered, then there is a possibility of mixing. That is what I wanted to say. But if it is intact body, the whole body, it should not get
Yeah.
mismatched unless their relatives have given a wrong DNA, or it is that sometimes it happens while looking at the neighboring slide. There can be mix up of the DNA particles. For example, somebody coughs, also it can get
Casual.
mixed up.
A mix up like this sounds very casual. I know you're explaining to me the protocols and how it could go wrong, why it could go wrong, but this is something that I would expect my government and government hospitals to be thorough with. I wouldn't expect
Yes.
this kind of botch up. Two families receiving the wrong bodies is shocking. Uh,
Yeah, that is
you know,
why the state government civil hospital is a state government hospital. It should have the Gujarat Central Forensic Science Lab, which is a university, should have taken over. If that has taken over, that would have been more cautious, and they have more manpower, and they would have been more responsible than a civil hospital in a state governed by a state government. And this kind of enormous amount of bodies matching, and when they do overtime or night and day when they do the work, sometimes just mismatching which should not occur has occurred.
we know
But a
it should not
central
occur,
government
but
lab.
what exactly are the international standards of disaster identification, of victim identification protocols have we really followed? If we did, we would have probably done a better job. We're being embarrassed globally. We have international platforms writing on these lines, and this is not what India is known to be. The country is meticulous. The aviation industry is lauded for its expertise in handling the scale that we have in our country. So something like this, as basic as victim identification, how can it go so horribly wrong? Captain Sanjay Karve, families are grieving, but yet they've got no closure. UK families, two families have claimed that they've got the wrong bodies, and that's disastrous to me. How can both families get the wrong bodies? One of them got two bodies in one coffin.
Yes,
Nabila, at the
when
outset, let me offer my sympathies to all the families, members of these 270 victims, and more so for the families who have received wrong bodies. Let me explain that when it comes to DNA matching, what Dr. Kumar just specified, there are protocols which all hospitals and all forensics labs follow. There are universal protocols, there are protocols during an accident. Let us not get Air India in a loop because of this. Air India is not competent, neither authorized, neither did it carry out any of the DNA matching. It was also not responsible for packing any of the bodies and sending it. They were only responsible for transporting the caskets to the United Kingdom.
I mean,
Unfortunately, what
I would beg to differ there. Does not Air India have any moral responsibility, even though the verification or identification process wasn't their duty? But yet, when the crash happened, investigation happened, they were very much involved. Some level of moral responsibility should be also part of Air India. In fact, they are the ones transferring these bodies.
Nabila, I agree with you. Put yourself in the shoes of an Air India doctor. You have submitted the sample which you have received from United Kingdom to a government lab or a government medical college. Let's say sample A. Now that particular sample has been matched with a coffin A and handed over to Air India. How does Air India verify that the A outside and A inside is the same? It has to rely on what the government lab certifies. Air India has no expertise of its own to reopen everything and recheck. I agree with you that the moral responsibility is there, but I have a simple question. How does Air India or any airline do that when a government lab certifies that, look, this is the sample I got, sample A, and the body which has been placed inside the coffin belongs to sample A. So let us not get Air India into this loop. Yes, an error has taken place, and we need to look into it as to why it has happened. We really cannot give this excuse to the world that we had 270 postmortems to be carried out or 270 DNAs to be matched. The fact remained that out of this 260, 270 DNAs from UK came only after about 48 to 72 hours. Initially, the DNAs were only from the localites. And a government hospital, which is supposed to be a prime place, is expected to be geared up to handle this. And they would have been sensitized by the government, and also they would be aware of the enormity of the situation. The entire world is watching.
If it's a foreign citizen, then a foreign citizen, you have the DNA coming in samples. It's very carefully packed and given to the authorities. I'm not too sure what at max can go wrong. If all the protocols are set and you're going as per guidelines, then which part are you missing out on? And in that sense, I'm all the more shocked that the London coroner there had to find out with a DNA test. Why was he first of all not in the loop in this whole process? You know, that's also shocking. Shouldn't he also have been in the loop right from the start, before the bodies were sent itself, ensuring that all of it was matched and then it moves?
Nabila, I agree with you. But my point here is, let us not get Air India into the loop.
Right, sir. I get your point. Well, I get your point. We are not going to. We are not here to vilify Air India. But of course, limited question was, Air India also has some amount of moral responsibility, maybe to help in aiding authorities to do a more seamless job, considering they are the ones being the transporters here, transporting these bodies. It's their airline that crashed, all of that. Okay, so let's leave Air India aside. Who's at fault then? Captain Chopra, would you want to jump in on that? Who is at fault here for this absolute disaster of a botch-up?
Thank you, Nabila, for having me. Now, I've been myself investigating the entire thing since morning and understanding what really went wrong. And we need to understand that, firstly, everything was done well in time. All our government authorities were on their toes. It's a very sensitive situation. It's a very chaotic situation which happened. And they handled all the DNA samples. Around 52, 49 have been handed over to the British. But what was the concerning thing is, look, we don't have a concept of a coroner in India. That's why when you ask that whether a coroner should have been there, no, she or he could not join initially the investigations. That's only done when the remains reach there. That's where the families requested a re-investigation to be done, and that's where the West London coroner, Dr. Fiona Wilcox, came in. She got it done, and they found out.
And thank God for that, right? Thank God for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they thought very well before the funeral itself. Let's get it checked first, and the families did the right thing to get the DNA checked. But what's the equivalent for a London coroner here in India? Who does this same job here to ensure that this transition is seamless?
Yeah, so till the late 90s, we had a concept of a coroner in India. Now, in India, it is ultimately done by the police and the state health departments. The doctors and all come in. It's a mixed team which does this investigation in such a case. But my another question is also there, that in case it is the coroner in London who got this done, what about the DNA samples which were handled to the Indian family? I don't think anybody really get that thing done. So I'm sure if this mix-up was done, it would have been there for the Indian families also. However, we need to also give the credit to all the Indian bodies, because firstly there's a range of bodies involved which people are not really aware of. First is of course the Ahmedabad Civil Hospital, which is there. It's a hub of the DNA sample collection and also for identifying the samples, or I'll say labeling the samples and handing over to them. Then comes the forensic science lab in Gujarat, in which almost 36 to 40 top forensic scientists were involved in profiling the DNAs, identifying them, and they according to them, they did it absolutely in the right manner. As one of our specialists also said right now, that it can be that the wrong DNA samples have been handed over to the authorities from the family side. That is also very well possible. Then there are more than
Makes me
230 state
believe,
teams involved.
Captain Chopra, we're
Yeah.
looking at two people from United Kingdom who claim that they've got the wrong bodies. If two of them have got the wrong bodies, then two others have got the wrong bodies too. So we're looking at least 4 families who are now impacted, and this is just about what we know. We're not even sure of the multiple families who are aggrieved
Exactly.
here,
Yeah.
the mortal
Yeah.
remains that they've got, whether it's actually their loved one or not. They have not really shown the presence of mind or have the kind of money to actually
Yes.
get an independent DNA test done to ensure that the mortal remains they've received is actually their loved ones. Now I'm sure people will be scrambling to check whether it is
No, I
really
don't
theirs
think
or
so.
not.
I don't think people in India will really be doing anything now, because it's a situation of grief for the families at this state, and nobody will spend in that much of time and money to again get the resampling and all done in India. But of course, they will be concerned looking at the news we are talking about
Family
today.
can have at this
However,
point to bid farewell. You know, when
yes.
you lose someone who's so dear to you, you will do everything, spend every last penny you have to ensure that they get a deserved, a respectable farewell.
No,
And if you're
why I'm saying this is because once this news came to the UK families, they have halted the process further.
yeah,
I mean, the mortal remains are still there, but in India, I think the last rites have been
most of them
handed
have
over and
already
processed by
carried
the
out
family.
their last rites.
Yes,
This
but
is
as
absolutely
Captain,
sad. I'm sorry. I'm really shocked. Actually, there are so many questions erupting in my mind. I wonder whose bodies have been sent to the UK families, whether those, the bodies, family members have actually been, are they waiting for their loved ones' corpses to come to them, or have they already carried out the funeral of someone else's body? These questions are now looming. That's a lot
yes.
for the government and Air India in every possible way, since it's their airline that crashed, to answer. And I'm not too sure if convincing answers can come in anytime soon in this time of grief. And every minute and
Look,
second is important now.
no, it is definitely, but as you know, Captain Karve was also saying that if you actually understand the sequence and whoever bodies are involved, it's not the Air India which comes into play. I know Air India has been blamed for a lot of things. It's already under radar of all the foreign bodies, all the foreign media, Indian media. But however, every time anything comes up, it's not the Air India which comes into play. I'm not saying they are not responsible, because the cases which have been filed by their lawyer James Haley Pratt is also against Air India and Boeing. However, when all in this particular situation, once the DNA profiling has been done, they have been identified. Now, now it's being handed to Air India, who again hired Kenyon International. It's a post-disaster specialist body internationally, which basically in such sensitive cases hands it over to the families. So Air India is just a body which is in center to take care of these remains and hand it over to the families through multiple other bodies. Directly saying Air India can do a mix-up is it's very rare. It's very difficult to understand how they are involved. However, I'm not saying that they should not be becoming part, and they've already given a statement that they will be fully cooperating in whatever way possible.
Okay, for me, this really comes down to global credibility. India's credibility to handle such such disasters, beg your pardon, effectively has now being questioned itself altogether. You have the best of doctors in India. You have a DNA hub, like you said, DNA testing hub is in Ahmedabad. Then what could really go so wrong that 2 families have received the wrong bodies? And 260 people is not very much for the government to handle. Is it a lot for the government to handle, for government hospital to handle 260 people's mortal remains? Is it a lot, Dr. Sampath?
Yes, definitely. At a time, 260 is a lot to handle. And in a mass disaster like this, it is the government who is responsible than any other agencies, because once a mass disaster comes, it is government duty to take over and then do all the whatever is needful. Then secondly, whatever UK coroner has done, that also has to be cross verified whether he is correct. And then those two interchange bodies, whether it is actually interchange among themselves, or is it totally a different body, we'll have to check also.
Well, I can only imagine how many possible mix-ups have happened if two UK families say that they've got the wrong bodies, and who else have got the wrong bodies. This is a very sad day today. This information that's come in has really jolted the entire victims' families, the 260 families who are right now grieving. For them, this is additional shock and pain and humiliation to bear. Captain Sanjay?
Nabila, I have a question to ask, which I am sure the UK government or the families would like to answer. Roughly about 40 to 45 coffins have been sent to the United Kingdom by an agency, which is an international agency, and Air India has been the agent, you can say, to help them out. How is it that only 2 families or 3 families out of the 40 odd families, they have raised a question or they wanted a DNA? As the coroner in United Kingdom carried out DNA sampling for all the 40 bodies or all the 45 bodies, or was it only these 2? If it was for all the 45 bodies, I can understand. If it was only for this couple of bodies, then the question is, why only these 2 families? Where was the doubt in the mind of these families? Isn't it theoretically possible that initially itself wrong samples were sent across? I'm just being the devil's advocate. I am not trying to take the side of the government hospital or the forensic lab.
If they were Indians, I would still think, you would still dismiss it thinking, well, I'm not going to think too much. This is the mortal remain. I will go with it. They are citizens of United Kingdom. They're foreign citizens, and they probably don't trust the Indian system. And look what happened. Exactly what their fears were came alive.
Out of these 45 people who flew, more than 85% were Indians, or let's say PIOs, persons of Indian origin.
Right.
They may be holding British passports. My question is this: why only 2 or 3 families wanted a re-DNA check to be done? There had to be some reason. As someone asked them, what was the element of doubt that they had, that they wanted to carry out a DNA sampling once again?
That question is redundant.
That is not redundant. That is not redundant.
So what, if at all that wasn't it, the botch up did not happen, then well, you could have asked questions about whether they're trying to malign the Indian government or malign the Air India airline. But the fact is that the DNA test, according to their lawyer, has come out negative. It's not matching with the family. So now the responsibility is on us to respond.
I'm
not for them to verify or clarify.
What I'm trying to say is there is much more to it than it meets the eye.
Like
if it
what?
was all 45,
like what,
I can
sir?
understand.
Like what, sir? Sir, even 1 out of 45, even 1 is wrong. And we're talking about a DNA mismatch. We're talking about wrong bodies being sent. This is not a simple mistake.
Why was the DNA test reordered? There has to be a valid reason for reordering the DNA test.
So as the reason is that they probably don't trust the Indian system, and that's precisely why their fears have now.
I am sorry.
It's
Let
been
us
validated.
not jump to that conclusion for Indian system. I am extremely sorry. I don't agree with this statement.
It is just a psychological satisfaction for them
there
to
you
reconfirm.
Go. Yeah. Sir, doctor, please. Doctor, you were saying?
Yes, it is. When they have the means, they will like to reconfirm the body so that it is everything is a psychological satisfaction for them, so that their loved ones are cremated with the due honors, and they perform the puja or something to their satisfaction. So it is their full right to order for a DNA analysis. There's nothing wrong in that. They have the full powers and the rights.
Well, they definitely have the rights, and they've exercised their right, and they've been proven right. Now, that's the unfortunate part. Captain Chopra, a final word from you on the credibility that India is losing globally with a report like this. It's really shamed us and the system at this point waking up to investigate, but the damage has already been done, because if 2 families in the UK have received wrong bodies, then definitely 2 other families are also, they might not even know, or maybe now they do, but all families now will be doubtful of what they got.
So one of the reasons which came in the media also that these families are asking for a retest there is because they very clearly said that when we were there in India to give our DNA samples, and it was a very chaotic situation. We were under pressure to sign a lot of documents and take these remains. So one of the fear in the minds of these families is that whether we are in that situation, we are being handed the right DNA samples, and unfortunately, and as you said, very embarrassingly, they have been proven right. I'm not saying the Indian system is wrong. Because in such a situation, in such a chaotic situation, there can be cross labeling, there can be cross contamination. These things are highly possible. I'm not saying that. However, uh, uh, you know, ultimately, what we are facing and we are seeing is an international embarrassment, which the MEA and the all the bodies involved, they have to come up and find a solution to, because at the end of the day, almost all foreign medias are there on our head to make sure that firstly, as we are seeing that somehow the pilot should be blamed for the crash, and now this problem. So this is all adding on to those things.
At this point, of course, Boeing, as many as the technical glitches and issues that it has, it could very well be their issue. The crash also may have been, a mistake or a glitch at their end, but that only end of investigation will reveal. But in the meanwhile, this is an opportune news for all media to criticize India globally. And that's what, and of course, more than anything, we're worried about the grieving families. They need answers. And I really appreciate all of you joining us on this and shedding light. We're really hoping, and we trust, Prime Minister Modi currently is in London. This might also come into official dialogue there. Well, we're hoping that the Indian government thoroughly investigates and gets to the bottom of this. Thank you.